Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Dennis Stone with the Jacksonville Urban League Center for Advocacy and Social Justice. And this evening, we're very pleased to have Leah Stiles from Sea Waves talking about mental health. She particularly has background as a veteran and will be able to share a lot of the challenges that are faced by veterans, as we all face in this realm of mental health. But first, to introduce Leah and to facilitate the program, we have Victoria Jack, one of our interns at the center. Also with us tonight is Saudia Barge and Rachel Reed, representing our internship program as well. So thank you for being here, and I'll turn it over to you, Victoria.
Thank you, Dennis. Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us tonight again. We're so grateful to have you for this important discussion on mental health awareness, a topic that impacts all of us in one way or another, yet is often overlooked or misunderstood. Tonight's town hall is a space for education, connection, and open conversation. Whether you're here as a student, as a community member, as an advocate, or a veteran, or just someone looking to learn more about mental health, your presence is greatly appreciated, and we hope you can take away something meaningful tonight that you can apply to your everyday life. Before we begin, I'd like to give a special shout out to Leslie Perez, the lead intern for orchestrating this town hall tonight, who unfortunately couldn't be here with us this evening. Leslie worked incredibly hard to pull everything together for tonight's town hall. She truly handled it all behind the scenes, and I'm here on behalf of her to help guide tonight's event. We're so grateful for the time, energy, and care she put into making this event possible. Now, without further ado, tonight we'll be hearing from this incredible speaker, Leah Stiles, who will share insight into the challenges surrounding mental health, from breaking down stigma to raising awareness about suicide risks and eating disorders, issues that both deserve our full attention. Leah Stiles is the founder of Sea Waves, a nonprofit organization dedicated to advocating for, educating, and supporting active duty service members, veterans, and their families who are dealing with disordered eating, eating disorders, and body dysmorphia. With 20 years of service and retiring as a Navy senior chief, she developed a strong commitment to supporting the well-being of her fellow service members. Having personally navigated the challenges of eating disorders during her service, she recognized the critical need for specialized support. Through Sea Waves, Leah is dedicated to offering crucial support and resources for prevention, recovery, and resilience. She strives to be a lighthouse, shining light on this often taboo issue and guiding others who may be in the dark or weathering their own storms. Thank you so much thank you so much, Ms. Stiles, for being here with us tonight. And I will turn things over to you to lead us into tonight's discussion.
Hi, well, I want to say thank you so much for inviting me and allowing me to be here. It's always an honor to have the chance to speak and just create a safe place for discussion, for questions, just open conversation. We do know that silence is where stigma just thrives, and so conversations are like this are exactly what we need to do to break through the stigma and the silence surrounding mental health and well-being. Did you want me to answer any questions or just keep going on my talk?
Thank you. Sorry. Yes, you can go ahead and start whenever you're ready.
Oh, okay. So I served 20 years in the Navy, and I served at a really interesting time. I had just finished boot camp when 9/11 happened. And so I really got to see the conversation around PTSD change. We thought when I came in that it was the generation before us, that it wasn't us. There was so much misinformation and unknown information that we didn't think that it could possibly apply to us, our generation, and our peers. And because I had already had an eating disorder before I came in the service, I had my eating disorder. It started when I was 11. I was hospitalized the first time when I was 12. So I was already what we call eating disorder informed. And then, like I said, after 9/11, I saw the conversation around PTSD change, and I kept hoping and thinking that the eating disorder conversation was coming shortly after it. And so as I kind of grew in my leadership, I also grew in my eating disorder. And ironically, all of the things that make me terrible in my eating disorder fueled me to be a really great sailor. Things like discipline and perfectionism, those things are really hard to differentiate when they work for good or when they work for bad. So for the first 10 years of my service, I was struggling with my eating disorder again, and I didn't tell anybody. I didn't want to tell anybody. I would try hinting around to different people, different leadership, looking for like that safe place to have conversation. And it just didn't seem like there's anybody uh, eating disorder informed, like it could look past the taboo. And so really struggled silently and by myself for those 10 years. And then I kept hoping that I would find different resources wherever we would find like PTSD resources. So I saw progress happening, but not enough to overlap for eating disorders. But at my 10-year mark, I I made chief petty officer, and so that's a very big jump in advancement. It's a leadership position, and when you make that role, you go through 6 weeks of initiation, and they teach you all the different parts of being a leader, and so much of that is mental health information. So of course there was lots of information about PTSD now at this point, and depression and anxiety and all these other things, but and they would bring in specialists and instructors, and for 6 weeks we just kept learning, and never once was eating disorders brought up. So that kind of shows like that taboo, that stigma is just not part of the mental health conversation. And even with 6 weeks of intensive training about resources, that wasn't a part of the conversation. And then I had been working for the same commanding officer for 3 years in a row, and I really trusted him and respected him, and he was really that kind of leader that I really wanted to be. And I was named his Sailor of the Year 3 years in a row. So I was number one at the whole base, at the whole command, 3 years in a row. So that shows you that I was excelling on the outside. I was getting promoted. I was number one, but I was internally a mess and struggling silently and in ways that a lot of people wouldn't be able to know or recognize or understand. And even at that time, there was no diagnosis for me. There was no diagnosis for my eating disorder. And I'll tell you why. Most people know what anorexia is. You've heard of anorexia, right? Some nods, maybe a thumbs up in the chat. Maybe I don't know if we have chat. Like that's a common one. What most people don't know is that less than 6% of people with anorexia ever meet the underweight criteria that's held for that. So 94% of people with anorexia are not underweight. And I am one of those people that did not fall into the underweight category. So I did not qualify for an anorexia diagnosis, although I was restricting oftentimes days and weeks on end. I also had developed a purging addiction. So I was purging multiple times a day. Back then, most doctors or providers would hear purging and think that's bulimia. But if you've never experienced a binging episode where you're overeating, you can't get diagnosed with bulimia. So I was just one thing short of both diagnoses, so I got none. But I tried to kind of feel that out with my commanding officer and tell him that I needed help, but I couldn't get a diagnosis. And he just didn't really want that conversation. He didn't know how to have that conversation. It was around that time that I ruptured my esophagus, and I ended up in the hospital with a ruptured esophagus. And when I got out of the hospital and I came back to work, I was told that the captain wanted to see me in his office, and I went there, and I thought we were going to sit on the couch and have a conversation about what was next, and instead he stood me at attention and he told me that there's no place in his Navy for me, and he tried to process me out. And so that just really goes to show that that the knowledge just wasn't there. The diagnosis wasn't there. Now, a few years later, there's a diagnosis that we call EDNOS, and it's kind of that umbrella for people like me who don't fall directly in one category or the other. And so this kind of covers it. But as the level of leadership, the knowledge for that just wasn't there either. I'm not mad at him. I don't feel angry about that at all. I did have to get a lot of lawyers to help me fight to stay in, and I did, and I fought and I won and I got to stay in. But what I learned was something really dangerous, and that was that I had to keep my secret more secret in order to have my career. And that's again was why I'm so thankful for opportunities like tonight to be able to have these conversations, because though they grow in the dark, they thrive in the dark. So fast forward a few more years and I'm struggling. I am really struggling, but I can't tell anybody and I can't get help. But I did get orders to my dream aircraft carrier, and I'm so excited. I'd always wanted to go to this aircraft carrier, and I had finally got the orders, but they rejected my orders based off my medical record, based off the ruptured esophagus that I had had. So I had to go meet with the triad, the top three on the ship, the CO, the XO, and the CMC. And I had to ask their permission for a waiver to waive what was in my medical record and allow me to come on. Interestingly enough, the command master chief of the ship was a former medic, and um, he also had a family member with an eating disorder. And so he knew exactly what he was dealing with. And he told me, your record is impeccable. And and I can tell that you get away with a lot behind your big smile, because I laugh, I joke about anything, and I can smooth it over. And I had attempted to joke this over with him, and he said, "Well, I'm going to let you come to my ship, but there's no purging on my ship, and you have to get your labs done every 2 weeks." And he just set these rules, and he was like, "Every 2 weeks we're going to have a meal together," and all these different rules. But I wanted to go on that ship so bad that I was like, okay, yes, 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 yes. And I meant it. I meant it. Like I absolutely meant it when I said yes, yes, yes. But that was when the ship was pure side. When it was time for the ship to go out to sea, um, I, in and out, back out to sea, I really struggled, right? Because in my sickness, in my eating disorder, in order to not purge on the ship, I had to not eat. And so that's only sustainable for just so long in that cycle that we go through. Um, and then I went through this really insane time period in my life, that don't worry, there's a book coming out in November because it's so insane that it deserves a book. But for 18 months, a whole 18 months time period, I went to 8 suicide memorials back to back. So my mother committed suicide, and then my niece, I had custody of, that lived with, she committed suicide, and then my neighbor, he was a command master chief, my mentor. Ironically, he wrote the Navy's suicide prevention policy, and I discovered him and his body after completed suicide, and this just kept happening 8 times. And then I spiraled, right? Like that was rock bottom. That was as far as I could go, but it was time for the full deployment at this point. So I went on the deployment. The show must go on, and I'm out in the middle of the ocean, and my chain of command, the top three, held an intervention. At this point, I was purging 8 times a day, and my labs were um, reflecting that. And they made the decision to medevac me off the ship and fly me back to the States for treatment. So I came back to the States. I came to the world's largest Navy base, to the hospital there. They knew that I was coming, and yet there was not one single eating disorder informed provider in the entire building. Nobody there had gotten more than 15 minutes of formal eating disorder education. And so that got me bounced around to a lot of different places. And there's also a thing with our medical insurance that they don't pay for inpatient or residential treatment for patients over the age of 21. And I was in my 30s at this point. I was a senior chief, which is the second highest enlisted rank that you can achieve. But there was still no way for me to get treatment. Um, we finally did find a place that could take me, that would take me, and that my insurance would pay for. But at this point, I'd almost died multiple times. And when I got there, I lived in that hospital on and off for 2 years on an NG tube. Um, and it came to the point that my treatment team invited my family, was in another state, to come in for a meeting, and they offered me palliative care. They said that, my eating disorder was so far advanced for 30 years that they really didn't see me getting better, or that, you know, I'd be they thought that it was treatment resistant. And that was kind of rock bottom for me. I was like, this is not how my story is supposed to end. Like, this isn't it. So I finally, for the first time, just decided to like fight back, to fight for myself. Later that day, there was an art class in the hospital. I was a disgruntled patient. I was always obnoxious when it came to art class. I was also usually the significantly older patient at this time too. But the assignment was to make a vision board placemat to be used at meals every day. And I was like, well, I just left a meeting where they said they couldn't see a future for me. Um, what future am I supposed to put on this placemat? Like, what am I supposed to see? And so I don't know why, but I decided to do it almost obnoxiously and sarcastically. And I put things on my vision board that just did not seem realistic or attainable or real. I put things like, go see my favorite football team at 10 of their games live. Um, Build a house where I can watch the Disney fireworks from my backyard. Um, Visit Greece, visit Italy, just multiple trips, like all these different things. And so I sat with that vision board for months. And so spoiler alert, this was a heavy topic all the way up until now, but I can tell you this is where everything changed. Everything on that vision board came true. Every single thing. And it's coming true. And so, yeah, sorry for all the triggering conversation that we had to get through to lead up to this. But now I want to lead to this, that your story doesn't end here, right? We use a comma at Sea Waves. In fact, we use I guess you would call it like a slogan or a mantra. It's called "Need a light, be a light," right? I go back and forth with the punctuation in that mantra. Sometimes it's a question mark. Need a light, question mark, be a light, right? Or need a light, semicolon, be a light. So let's look at it both ways. With the semicolon, your story doesn't end here. Like, you needed the light, you were in the dark, and then you get to write the next chapter. You get to turn the page. You don't have to wait for Monday or New Year's or whatever day you think you have in your head to start changing things for yourself and around you, or to get better, or to get healing, or to talk about it. You get to choose your story. It doesn't end there. My story could have ended at palliative care, and they were willing to make me comfortable, and I could have taken that choice. Um, and then I like to turn around and tell it the other way. Need a light, question mark, be a light. And so people ask me like, how and why, like, how did you go from so like low and dark? Because the first few chapters in the book were pretty insane too, with lots of neglect and abuse, and all the traumatic, crazy, triggering things were there too. And I think that again, that's where I stand by need a light, be a light, as in be the person that you wish you had. And so I always wished that I had, a loving and compassionate mother. I didn't get dealt those cards, but I became one. I have 5 kids. I became a foster mom at one point. I had 8 teenagers at the same time. That's a fun chapter. That was definitely fun. Um, need a friend, be a friend. I really put time and energy and effort into being a good friend to people. Need a supportive leadership. Um, that's where I focus. That's where I focus my next. What I needed, I became. Need a light, be a light. And so part of that process was me realizing that if I, as a senior chief, was unable to access appropriate levels of support or resources for my eating disorder or even a diagnosis. I'll say a senior chief with a very extensive network, right? And then I knew that there were others out there as well. And my husband served alongside me. We both retired the same day that we moved to Winter Garden, where we can watch the fireworks from our backyard. And My son is active duty and he serves now too. And so I started doing research and come to find out that 1/3 of females and 1/5 of males in the military are struggling with an eating disorder. I've also come to find out that the number one cause of death for somebody with an eating disorder is suicide. So as we talked about that, I've lost way too many people to suicide. I was like, we have got to come up with an answer and a solution. And so that's why I founded Sea Waves. And Sea Waves really is built around a lot of my lived experience, what I saw, the gaps in the care, and the things that I can do, right? Something is needed. What can I be to do that? While we talked earlier about the full acronym, support, education, awareness, wellness, and validation for eating disorders and suicide prevention, what we really do is in the first 3 letters: support, education, and awareness. So the S is resources and referrals. So I connect directly the military community, active duty veterans, service members, and their families to the eating disorder organizations, treatment centers, and providers. And while I'm on that bridge, I try to help remove any hurdles or barriers. So whether it's navigating our insurance or pro bono relationships or scholarships, whatever it takes to get that care to our military community for free. For the education, I developed a program called MEDAL. It's the Military Eating Disorder Awareness and Literacy Training. And this is for people like the commanding officer that I met that are amazing leaders and just don't know what they don't know. And it teaches them eating disorders 101, how to recognize it, some things they could say that's helpful, some things are not helpful. We found that other organizations really like to have this training as well. And then we also started a webinar series tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern Time is our webinar series on how eating disorder prevention is suicide prevention. It's free if there's anybody that wants to learn about that. But it's providing that education, all right, that's life-saving. And then awareness and advocacy. I take many trips to DC. We did get an act passed through on the Hill that is going to get that change from that age from 21 to 55. So people like me would be able to get medical coverage, but it also makes this kind of eating disorder education mandatory for military leadership. So although that was passed into law in 2023, it has not yet been implemented. And so I do a lot of advocacy on how to get it implemented. Um, So that's kind of the big story in the nutshell. I want to say that this is such a safe place to ask me absolutely anything. If you ever had a question about eating disorders or mental health or the military, anything at all, definitely a safe place to ask me anything that you would like.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing that. I'm just, wow. I have one question. It really is in relation to when you brought up that when you entered palliative care, and no one really had any sufficient knowledge about eating disorders. How do you think it can be in relation to medical personnel or to everyday people? How do you think we as a community can reduce stigma around seeking mental health support or around eating disorders? And yeah, just how do you think we can get better at get better education, I guess I would say.
Yeah, no, that you kind of answered your own question. How do we get better at breaking the stigma is by educating ourselves. So just take a little time, however you like to consume education. There's lots of podcasts. If you visit our page, there's a link of about, I think like 20 of them I've been on. But you know, there's podcasts, there's books, there's websites, you know, definitely it's a matter of educating yourself. We're taught often so many things through media and social media. And the one of the worst things you can learn through media and social media is about eating disorders or disordered eating or body dysmorphia. The conglomerates and the billionaires and it's just a huge industry, and you're not going to get your true information there. So to break the stigma, it would be truly find ways that you know that you can educate yourself, and that may be taking a class, that may be volunteering at one of the local eating disorder facilities. Sometimes they take volunteers, or you know, take the free webinars. Just find different ways that the conversation coming here tonight was the first step. Everybody that's here, you took a great step in breaking the stigma and breaking the silence.
Gotcha. Thank you. I have another question. Would you say that stigma and cultural perceptions affect the way individuals seek help for these issues, like back when you were trying to get help earlier?
Oh, yes, definitely. Especially from the military lens, right? When you think about, um, you know, strength, right? We think about the military and how strong everybody's supposed to be. And that's true. And we are, like, service members are strong. And then I'll even go so far as to say like the men, and the expectations of what strength in a man looks like, right? And that really doesn't allow for the juxtaposition of being strong and having mental health issues. So yeah, there's a lot of stigma, you know, in those through those lenses alone, just like men, military, and all of that. But just in also for all of us in everyday life, like we've come so far. I think like if we look back like 10 years, you know, I don't know how many different generations we have in here, but like, did our parents or our parents' parents ever say like, "Gosh, I'm experiencing anxiety today"? You know, like it wasn't like that, right? And so we're coming along and being able to identify those things, but opening it up to conversation, just like kind of unlike what the generations before us did, right? Because anxiety is not new, depression's not new, neither is PTSD or like none of this is new. But it's becoming more conversational, and each one of us can play a part in making it more conversational.
Yeah, and I think like putting labels to the experiences people are having and talking about it and normalizing it will make it more, I guess, palatable to the public, so it's easier to talk about. And then I have one final question before we open it up to the audience, but what's something that you've learned from your work that has changed the way that you view mental health?
Oh, that's a good question. That's changed the way I view. Okay, so I would say it is not what we think it looks like. Okay. So we'll take eating disorders, right? Back in the 80s and the 90s, what was on the Lifetime channel or on the different talk show hosts. And, of course, they only showed the tiniest of tinies, and we've already established that's less than 6%, right? And so you cannot tell by looking at somebody. You cannot tell by the size of their body how malnutrition they are or are not. You cannot tell. And so that's eating disorders. And then I'll even go so far as to say those that are struggling. My neighbor, my best friend, my mentor, who wrote the military's policy on suicide prevention, he knew exactly what not to look like. And he was one of the top ranking in the Navy and in line to be the top ranking. And you know a hard time and a bad day, and that decision. And I mean, honestly, at his memorial, if I could tell you how many people were like, can't believe this is true, like how him, it's not what it looks like, it's not what we think it looks like, right? And so yeah, I would say really kind of like di diving into, those mental health issues, both, depression, suicidality, eating disorders, that there is no look, there's no age, there's no gender, there's no rank, there is no race, there is no religion, there is no determining factor. But again, if you look at media or social media, they have painted eating disorders to be a young, white, teenage, affluent disease. And nothing could be true or further from the truth.
100%. And just real quick, one thing really stuck out to me that you said earlier. It was that these issues grow and thrive in the dark. And I just think that was just on point because, like you said, it doesn't look one way. And if we're not talking about it, if we're not normalizing it, we're not doing all these things to further education, then people aren't going to have anybody to turn to talk about it and have shine a light on those conversations. Yeah, so I guess to wrap up this discussion, does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask? Or any stories or comments they'd like to share?
I would like to ask if there is links or any type of website or things we can go to for the webinars, if we can get that posted in the chat for our lovely audience who want to continue learning. Thank you.
Yes, yes, I'll put those in the chat here. At Sea Waves Inc. is our handle on most of the platforms. And yes, Victoria, it is no mistake that we put a lighthouse in our logo. Yes, we love all things nautical, but it's exactly for that. It's shining a light. It's shining a light not only on topics that are still kind of like taboo or like in the dark, but it's also shining a light for those that are still in the dark, so they can see where to follow, how to get there, where to navigate.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Does anybody else have any questions?
I will also put my personal email in the chat. Sometimes it's easier to ask questions directly. And, I don't normally do this, but since there's not that many people in here, I will even put my phone number in the chat. And if anybody has any questions or everyone just needs somebody to talk, um, I'm open door.
Thank you so much.
So I have a question. I assume you've been able to convince some of the leadership in the Navy, particularly those that have to manage vessels, of the importance of this problem. What is it, and hopefully that's true. And if that's true, what is it that tends to get them to move from, denier, doubter to the believer?
I'll tell you that I've had a very difficult time getting that um very difficult time. And I will also tell you that I I wish I had a better answer. But unfortunately, the ones that have become advocates um, have found out that a family member, their child usually, has become severely ill. It's kind of been the same with legislators that have gotten behind us. It's happened after a loved one has gotten a severe diagnosis. It's just kind of one of those things. Um, happy to explain more probably offline, but you know, in my career, I did public affairs, and I'll tell you that you know, part of the apprehension for upper military leadership, um, is that you know, you don't want to acknowledge a problem in which you don't have um significant or reliable answers and solutions for, right? And so if they acknowledge, because I've pulled together, Sea Waves has a research and data team. I've pulled together doctors and scientists from across the country that have researched eating disorders in the military. Because originally it was like, well, where's the numbers, Leah? You say this, but there's no numbers. Well, there's no numbers because the military doesn't do any screenings. There's no health screening for eating disorders. There's no yearly, there's nothing. So there was no number. So we're finally getting the numbers and we're getting the numbers up there, but they still really can't acknowledge eating disorders because the next question from, you know, John Q. Public or the reporters or anything is going to be like, well, what do you do to support them when they are sick and they are ill? And they don't have a good answer for that yet. So they're still going a little bit on the avoid go ahead and avoid the topic thing. So we're hoping to make some more headway, you know, especially with the SERV Act, you know, being placed into law and, you know, with this data. But there hasn't been a lot of movement because of that.
Mhm. I did some lecturing at the Coast Guard Academy in Connecticut, and I'm just thinking that um, is there is there a possibility to get um, there and at the Naval Academy to get some of the professors, or at least one of the professors, to be aware? They obviously must have some teaching on psychology and the like.
They do. And the Naval Academy does have a registered dietitian that is eating disorder informed.
Mhm.
Our medal training, we're right in the process now of getting that in the sam.gov so we can get government contracts for it and you know teach them better. But yes, so that's usually my counteractive point when military leadership just kind of doesn't want to acknowledge eating disorders or the results thereof, or they're tied to suicide, I rely on speaking prevention to them. And so we want prevention in boot camp. We'll teach about eating disorders, teach that you're going to be publicly weighed in front of your friends and physically measured, body taped in front of your peers and your subordinates. Same thing at the academies. And so let's teach then before this is even developed, you know, what kinds of behaviors and disordered behaviors can develop into further, you know, eating disorder. So that's definitely the part that we rely on when trying to pitch our medal training, is the prevention piece.
Very good. And if we shift away to just depression, anxiety in general, is there obviously there must be recognition that this is possible on board, and are affirmative approaches being taken and developed in the Navy?
Or did you, in
Just
regards,
general anxiety,
oh,
depression,
yes.
mental illness.
Oh yes, yes. The conversation around general mental health has come a long way in the Navy and across all branches. There is lots of supports, programs, education. Um, I I can't complain. I can't complain in general.
Mm.
The general knowledge and support and the education we provide leadership to be able to recognize and so I was saying like I saw it change around like depression and PTSD and even and suicide prevention. Our suicide numbers are really outrageous. 22 veterans a day, 3 active duty a day. The ship that I was stationed on lost 7 in 1 month to suicide. Um, that happened on 2 of my ships. And so they've definitely acknowledged it and have tried to put different, there's a psychiatrist on every ship.
Yeah. We used to do 22 sit-ups or push-ups a day uh, during the month of Veterans Day
Yeah,
to
November.
remind us that of that problem.
Yes, that is good. And that's helpful and that's great. And that's bringing awareness. But you know what's better is send this webinar invite to 22 people.
Yeah. Well, it'll be out on YouTube by the end of the week. So,
Okay.
right.
Yes, could talk to people. The push-ups are great because it gave people a way that if they didn't know what else to do, it gave them something to do. And making connections, making 22 connections is probably an even better way.
Mhm. Yeah, we're actually having a speaker in a couple of weeks talk about DEI, and she is a veteran and has pushed awareness, suicide awareness, uh, in a number of contexts. And her name is Tammy Hodo. She's one of our board members, and she's she's a guiding light in that regard.
Good. I love hearing that.
So I take it based on what you've been saying, the numbers must be getting a little bit better relative to suicide, or is it,
Um,
or there's so many um, forces that that are in combination of modern society, social media, and the like, and what's happened generally to armed forces, that maybe it's just it's a hard situation.
Yeah, we see slight improvements from time to time. The 22 a day, that has been, you know, kind of coined. Um, most research will show that that's an underestimate, that it's higher than
Yeah.
that. And so there are times that we do get it back down to 22 a day, which is a win. Um, and it's just still far too many, right? But when you think about the numbers and statistics, when you think about 1/3 of females and 1/5 of males in the military community struggling with a mental illness that's not acknowledged by the military or screened for or treated for, where the number one cause of death is suicide. Um, I can't say that will move that needle significantly without acknowledging that demographic.
Hmm. Right. Yeah. Absolutely. I
But
have a
I'm
question.
hopeful.
Go
Go ahead.
ahead.
Yeah, I know I'm hopeful. I'm involved in the Face the Fight coalition. So that was USAA, the big bank.
Hmm.
they brought together over 250 organizations to really get after this, this number, this suicide, prevention in our military community. And so they've come up with all kinds of innovative ways. I mean, there's organizations that are gaming, like video gaming, and that leads towards, suicide prevention. And there's definitely a lot of work being done and effort being made, conversations happening, collaborations happening. But when I started going to these Face the Fight organizations, Sea Waves was brought in, and of the 250 organizations, not one of them was an eating disorder organization. Of the 45,000 veteran service organizations, there's 45,000, Wounded Warrior Projects, USOs, you name it. There's 45,000. Before Sea Waves, there was no eating disorder one. And so yeah, that's how tomorrow's webinar really came into place. I put the flyer in the chat there, was because, again, these organizations were working so hard, but they're missing a really significant piece. And whether it's stigma or taboo or, unknown, information or what, they're missing it. So we've invited them to come out to this webinar. We made it free. We're going to give it quarterly. If you can't make it tomorrow, it's September 10th, at 3 p.m. Eastern time is the next time. We're going to give it again in December. Mid-December is when we see suicide numbers really pop up then too. And we're going to continue to give this quarterly.
That's great. How long have you been in existence, your organization?
We just had our second birthday.
Great, congratulations. Happy birthday.
Thank you. 7-Eleven.
That's great. Well, Victoria, any other questions?
All right, yeah, I was going to ask if anybody else had any other questions they wanted to ask while we were still here. All right, if not, you can always message her or email her, and she is more than happy to answer any questions. To close things up, I want to thank everyone so much for being here with us tonight. Like we discussed before, it's very important to have these conversations, to shine a light on these conversations, so we are normalizing all of these topics. I want to give a special thank you to our incredible speaker today, Miss Leah Stiles, for sharing your time, your insight, and your perspective on such important topics. We sincerely appreciate it, and it was so interesting to learn about. To everyone who's attended here tonight, thank you for showing up and engaging and contributing to a healthy, honest conversation about mental health, about eating disorders and suicide risks. These conversations matter, so continue to have them, whether it's here or outside or in your daily life or wherever. It's important to have these conversations. And we hope you leave tonight feeling informed and empowered and reminded that you're not alone if you're dealing with something, or if you have a loved one who's dealing with something. So let's continue to have these conversations beyond the space and keep advocating for compassion and awareness and education for and within our communities. Thank you so much again, everyone, and have a wonderful evening.
And I did want to, Victoria, on behalf of the Urban League, thank you for facilitating tonight, and thank our speaker for being with us. Thank you so much. And thank you to our guests. I see one of our perhaps future interns on our list tonight. So thank you everyone for attending, and have a great evening.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Good night.
Bye.